Former professional kickboxer Andrew Tate has been banned from TikTok following his bans on Facebook and Instagram. This comes after Tate has grown a following online for his misogynistic views, where he argues that women are the property of their husbands and should, quote, have kids, sit at home, be quiet, and make coffee. He has also claimed that he needs authority over the women he dates, saying, "You can't be responsible for a dog if it doesn't obey you," according to the Washington Post.
The Post also writes that Tate has said he would attack a woman who accused him of cheating and described himself as, quote, absolutely a misogynist. His fans have called him the king of toxic masculinity. So he's been booted from all these platforms, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. I think TikTok is actually taking down videos, not even being posted by him, but just depicting him of other people. It's like it's a ban on Andrew Tate content, content featuring him, not necessarily content he creates. Okay, so this is, I think, frustrating in that the reasons for the bans have focused disproportionately, or it's being framed as a speech-related issue, that he says misogynistic things and saying that is dangerous and that causes real harm. And then, we start to get into that, well, what is, speech versus actions dichotomy? Is this just kind of censorship of a provocative person? That is something that I've worried about and you've worried about. We talk about the bad social media policies and how it can chill legitimate dissent or legitimate perspectives. All that said, it seems if you get beyond that there's actually something to his actions that might be reasonably something social media should try to stop, because he's been, I'm reading about him more. He was involved in something called Hustlers University, which sounds like just a pyramid scheme type thing that he was running. And also that he has been investigated for sex trafficking, for kidnapping. That he talked about going to Romania, taking a woman to Romania. The State Department got involved. So there's some actual underlying potential criminal behavior here to this individual that when Meta says, so Meta, unlike via Facebook, Instagram, unlike the other platforms, said they were taking action against a dangerous individual, not against. So TikTok said Tate's account was removed for violating the company's policies that bar content that attacks, threatens, incites violence, or dehumanizes an individual group. And I can see why that is kind of broad and could be used against legitimate speech. Meta said it had removed his accounts on Facebook and Instagram for violating their policies against dangerous organizations and individuals. And I can see why you would describe him as a dangerous individual, given that he is involved with and the State Department and law enforcement thinks he is involved with some legitimately sketchy and potentially criminal enterprises. Does that make sense?
Is the allegation that he's using the social media platforms to traffic girls or women?
I don't know.
I'm struggling with this because, one, has he been also convicted of these things yet?
No, I don't think so.
All right, so there's lots of layers to this. One, are we saying that people who are being investigated but not have yet been convicted of a crime are no longer able to use social media? If I'm being investigated for a crime, do I no longer get to use my phone service to call people in my life and communicate, or to use email? What is it seems punitive in a way that isn't necessarily calculated.
The social media sites nuke the accounts of mass shooters and sort of people, like they immediately take all that content down.
The argument there, whether or not you agree with it, is that there's a well-documented history of copycats and who don't want people going and committing mass shootings. Is the argument here that
probably some of these platforms would make that argument about this guy.
Right. It's a little problematic that he hasn't been convicted of anything yet. But let's presume that he is convicted of sex trafficking. I can see the case that you don't want copycat sex traffickers, but if the content isn't about sex trafficking, I'm also a little confused. Do we? And this is a question I'm asking: are R. Kelly videos to be pulled from the internet after his conviction for similar kinds of acts? Should the Cosby Show be pulled from social media? Right. I know a lot of stations don't run it anymore, but should it be pulled, all clips pulled from social media? Should O.J. Simpson games, football games that he played in as a young athlete, be stripped from the public record? Should O.J. Simpson as a human being not be allowed to, of course he wasn't convicted criminally, but in a civil suit, be allowed to be on social media? Should Roman Polanski movies not be allowed to be shown on social media? And should interviews with him be pulled down from TikTok? And I don't say that to obviously absolve any of these people from culpability. I'm not huge fans of any of the people listed, but I'm just trying to figure out what the consistent metric that's being applied here is, because as you pointed out, it could very much be applied to any number of people.
So, okay, the Washington Post does say his sudden popularity on social media did not happen organically, according to The Guardian. Paying members of Hustlers University were directed to bombard social media platforms with his videos, selecting the most controversial to boost engagement in what experts described to the news outlet as manipulation of the algorithm. Among videos that gained traction were ones in which he advised his followers to slap, grab, choke women in the bedroom, etc. So I think there's an underlying social media element to the, again, potentially not just speech related, but potentially actual advocacy of violence or engagement in some kind of scam or deception or fraud. That, look, the social media companies are not, they're private companies, and at some point if they say, you know what, this person's involved in a lot of borderline fraudulent or possibly illegal activity, and we don't want them on our service for our customers and users to interact with, that is a call they get to make.
So does Donald Trump get pulled down for Trump University and that pyramid scheme and those kinds of fraudulent endeavors?
Obviously these things are what the site's judgment is, often compromised by political bias. So
yeah, it's interesting because obviously I'm not wild about.
Right. But we did a segment earlier today about how Walgreens was going to be sued for being a middleman for distribution of prescriptions that other people wrote. It is a totally kind of a different issue, but sites not wanting to make themselves liable for really, and the government wanting to hold social media liable for what, despite Section 230, for what goes on there, and there are exceptions to Section 230 for sex trafficking, sex-related crimes, some other things. So companies are liability averse. It is not. I'm saying it is not crazy for a company to say, this looks like this could get us in some trouble.
I understand why they would want to do it. I understand why any one of these companies would have a kind of a maximalist view of these sorts of things. But it also is, I don't know, it is obviously driven by a very subjective view of what is harmful. I was thinking when you were reading out the policy terms, I forget what they were now, but I was thinking of all the things that I, with my own particular left perspective, think are horrible and destructive and coercive and detrimental to various groups, yada, yada, yada. I think a lot of content.
You think open advocacy of capitalism should be removed from the social media sites?
I think a lot of content is very deleterious to the interests of working class people, and very stigmatizing. And like you could make an argument that some of the rhetoric that even came from Young Turks that we were discussing in an earlier segment that was factually wrong about the cause and effect in some of these instances of violence in the public, and factually wrong about the actual rise in crime in a lot of these cities, which has been misreported. In order to gin up a lot of fear about what's going on.
There's a rise in crime in some cities and not in others.
And not in others. And I'm sorry, like a lot of the fear mongering that's going on, and particularly a lot of these liberal, like places like New York, is really attenuated from the lived experiences of people who are actually there and of actual records on crime. And reporting on crime has gone up exponentially while crime rates have not followed in suit. So I could see an argument for why those kinds of things should be stripped. And I'm not arguing that. I'm saying I could see an argument based on your ideological perspective that all sorts of different things should be banned, and that's what gives me hesitation here.
I mean, I'm very against the banning of things, but there is super sketchy people engaged. Like, if you engage in super sketchy stuff online a lot for a long time, eventually you're going to get in some trouble, and that's not. And then you're going to claim, oh, censorship, oh, martyrdom, oh, it annoys me. If you're grifting people, if you're ripping them off,
but then
eventually you're going to get yourself in some trouble.
This is what we talked about with the Alex Jones stuff, Alex Jones trial. if someone is being grifted, if there is really a pyramid scheme, if people are really violating the law, if he's really trafficking women, are we disproportionately relying on social media to hold people accountable when we should be focused more on the criminal justice system? Or is the criminal justice system so unable to do its job that we feel like this is our kind of last resort?
Well, right, and maybe that is the remedy for this person. Again, I don't know more of the details about it, exactly what he's accused from, but in the meantime, I don't blame the social media sites for saying this is too sketchy for us.
All right, well, audience, let's hear from you. Weigh in the comments.
Tell us what you think. Tell us what we got wrong about that.
And we'll have more Rising for you after this.